Hello and welcome to episode 29 of Seddon and Laceys Comics Dash here on Pop Culture Productions.
I was
Like,
trying to think of
subscribe,
something
follow the channel.
significant for 29, but I had nothing in my locker. I couldn't think of anything that I could relate to the number 29.
No, nothing here either.
It's a bit of a bland number, really, isn't it?
Yes. But what we're covering is not bland at all, as today we're going in to what some would say is a grail level run, the start of the Frank Miller Daredevil run, which I have been reading the Volume 1 collection, and I know that you've been bashing through.
Yes. I was trying to remember. Was the collected edition you've got called Daredevil Visionaries, or have I just added that into my head as something that I saw when I was plopping through Amazon?
You added that into your head because it's just
Yes!
Daredevil Frank Miller Volume 1.
Well,
but as is tradition, because we like tradition around here, before we go into Daredevil, it's time to get into our reading corners.
Reading corner, Chris. Well, yet again, I feel like my reading corner might be spoilt by a video that comes out beforehand. But I saw on the Twitterverse, because I am now well versed in things such as the Twitter. I just saw like a random advert for an Image comic called Supermassive. I've not heard of it, and I do kind of keep my eye on Image, even though I've not been reading a lot over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But it looked like a superhero thing, and I don't tend to go to Image for my superhero stuff, but I was kind of curious. Had a very quick look at it, and it suggested that this was almost a crossover event for something called Radiant Black. So I asked on Twitter, is anyone reading Radiant Black? Is it any good? An avalanche of positivity was thrown back at me. I've never seen, certainly in my experience, my short-term experience of Twitter, I've never seen anything like the positivity that's been thrown back. And people were just saying, it's a must buy, it's a must buy. It's a great new superhero universe. It's a great new experience. And I think after about the sort of 30th to 40th tweet telling me how good it was, I thought, oh, do you know what? I'm just going to knuckle down. And the first issue is free on Image Comics. But I just thought, do you know what? People love this. I'll just get the trade. And I ordered the trade. And I even said, oh, trade ordered. And still the positivity flowed in, including joining Discord groups about it and things like this.
So all in then.
Oh, but people were just sort of saying, you know, like, we love it, and here's like our Discord group, and I think there's a few podcasts out there, and I haven't looked at any of the podcasts yet because I think if I'd watched any of the podcasts or listened to any of the podcasts, it might spoil what I was going to experience in the story. But yeah, such a groundswell of support that I bought the trade and read the trade. However, what I will do is, if I have pre-released the review, because I am planning on doing a review video on the channel. If I've pre-released it, I'll do something swanky in the video right here, and I'll show you where to find it and what it looks like. And if I haven't released it yet, I'll do something swanky here, which says coming soon, my review. But either way, yes, that's what really kind of captured my attention. And I guess one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up was I hear about the toxicity of the Twitter community, and don't get me wrong, I'm not daft. I do know that it's out there, but so far my experience of comics Twitter, and don't get me wrong, I've avoided anything that says hashtag restore the Snyderverse, which I think's helped. But yeah, so far it's been fantastic, and it was really nice to get such a heartfelt recommendation from so many people. I didn't have a single person say no, it's not very good. So that's what I was up to in my reading corner. How about yourself?
I went to space in a galaxy far, far away and have read Volume 1 of the Star Wars collections, the Skywalker Strikes, which is the first of the trades.
This is the Marvel, the first of the Marvel ones, isn't it? Or the first of, when I say first of the Marvel ones, yeah, the new Marvel ones, I should clarify.
Fuck me, this is pretty. It's the first thing I will say, this is fucking pretty.
Do you know what? I read it when it came out. It piqued my intrigue enough to go, Marvel, Star Wars, creators that I like on it, and I got it, and I was, much like you, I was so impressed with the way that it looks, and the art is great, but the art feels Star Warsy as well, doesn't it? It's not like an artist has gone, let me reimagine the Star Wars universe. This felt like, to large parts, that I was watching A New Hope on a comic book page.
Yeah, because obviously this is set just at the end of New Hope.
Yeah.
And Han looks fucking spot on for Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Leia looks exactly like Carrie Fisher. Luke looks like fucking Hamill. Everyone looks exactly as they should. And as I said, it's fucking stunning. Vader, fuck me. This is truly where you get the idea that obviously Star Wars is a samurai spaghetti western, because the Vader that they do looks like you could just be walking out of a samurai film. He is so impressive.
Well, Chris, I know this is booking on the fly, something we love in the wrestling world, but I share your love for this. How's about, Seas, we do a little show on this?
Yes.
Because I think, like, I'm getting the feeling, spoilers for anyone for our future show, but I'm getting the feeling you liked it. I also liked it. And as much as I don't want to avoid when we read something we don't like, but I'm all about channeling, like, positivity, especially when we've both really loved something. So I think maybe we park your reading corner, and maybe next week's show we go into Star Wars corner. How about that?
I like this.
Yes.
And it gives me time to potentially get number 2 read as well, because I did a cheeky because I needed to get Will's birthday present book delivered sharpish.
Yep.
And got a free 14-day trial of Amazon Prime. So I have Prime reading as part of Comixology. So it's just like, I can put that onto the one at work and bash through it at work.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I mean, we'll probably get into this a bit more in next week's show, as we now know it will be. God, look at us being prepared. But there's quite a bit of expanded universe in there. So, and I've read bits and bobs of it. I mean, I won't go into that too much, because obviously, if you're enjoying it, I won't go into spoiler territory for stuff you haven't. But we can maybe touch on a little bit of that, as well as to have we enjoyed it enough to go and seek out more, etc., etc. But God, see, reading corner, what a bloody beautiful thing,
I know,
isn't it?
Spoiler, I like it enough that I'm going to try and read number 2, because I think that's on Prime for free as well.
And have a little look, because if the Darth Vader series that runs alongside this is on there as well, I would
if
spoiler,
not,
say it's better. So
if anything though, if it ain't on Prime, it'll be on.
It's on Marvel Unlimited.
Marvel, so I'll just read it when I'm at home instead of.
Well, and as I say, I know we're going to talk about it next week, but it was very high on my list to revisit. As I say, I read a chunk of it, and then for whatever reason, and not because of a drop in quality, I think again distracted by other shiny objects or life,
shiny and new.
Yeah, I kind of fell off it. So when we started to read stuff on Marvel Unlimited again, it was quite high up on my list of something to get to. So yes, boom, reading corner. Births, further shows. I like that.
Yes. So, won't go into much more on Star Wars.
Sorry.
But yeah, that's the only thing I've read this week, other than what we're going to talk about. Because having the boy does best laid plans and all.
You have to do parenting things, don't you?
Think you're going to be able to sit and do some reading. Never happens. Especially
as it was his birthday as well, wasn't it? So I imagine he wanted some bloody birthday attention as well.
I know, taking him into London.
Tickets that boy. Ghost. Stick him up the chimney and be done with it.
take him to the Natural History Museum.
And leave him there.
All
of these are good reasons why I am not a parent.
So yes, so we are going into Daredevil.
Yeah.
So the version that I was reading starts with Frank Miller's 2 issues of Spider-Man that he draws, which is Spider-Man and Daredevil.
And I will say, mate, you have to go solo on that because I didn't, because I read it through Marvel Unlimited. I didn't get the Spider-Man issues read. I did plan to get them read like just before the show, but some IT issues with my computer prevented me from cramming them in. So I'm the Daredevil issues only. So, but I am quite intrigued because I wasn't sure whether. Did he just draw these Spider-Man issues, or did he write them as well?
So these ones, he is just the
penciler. Yeah, sorry, draw.
Penciler for them.
In my head, I always think it was draw, but yeah, penciler.
Yeah. But yeah, so not much in notes on it because I literally was sort of very small on the notes for this one. But it is Spider-Man loses his sight. So Daredevil, being a blind hero, helps him.
Makes sense.
Takes him to his doctor, and it's quite interesting to see the two working together. And you can see, I know Frank Miller stuff from Batman and the stuff he obviously does later outside of this. And I mean, this was his first.
I think so as well. Yeah, yeah, I think so. Memory,
but you see what becomes what you know of the Frank Miller style early.
Yeah,
even if it's a little bit of a rough around the edges levels of what he will then do. But
and I think there'll be a bit of that, won't it? As we kind of go through what is included in this collected edition. I think when I wrote notes because I've become this guy who writes notes now because my memory's so bad, not because I think I've got anything interesting to say, but quite often I found myself writing that note of going, oh, like you see what Miller becomes, or here's a precursor for something that is coming later down the line. And I think that's probably one of the nice things about visiting a run, or let's go with run of a creator from his early stages. Is we've seen a lot of the stuff that comes afterwards, and I think it's nice. It's nice to see that evolution of them. I mean, sometimes it was even panel to panel. You go, oh, that one bit ropey, but that one, in 5 years' time, you're banging that panel out over and over again because you've just got much better at your craft at that point.
But yeah, no, so it was good. But it was one of those, like, I get why they do the crossovers in the way they did, and obviously, I mean, pretty soon afterwards is when he then gets to do the Daredevil run and start doing all the drawing of that. So that's his little baby as such.
And for context, for anyone who's watching who's a relatively new reader, crossovers of characters was so much rarer back then. You know, in effect, everyone has been on a team with everyone at this point and is jumping in and out of people's issues left, right, and centre. But you might get a crossover once a year. And when I say a crossover, certainly for characters that had series running, like for ones that weren't in ongoing series, they might show up a little bit more here and there. And we'll talk about a particular character who shows up in a Daredevil run later for things like that. But yeah, these were akin to what your modern day events were. I mean, this was late 70s, wasn't it? And
79.
Yeah, and also I think there'll be a few bits that we'll pick up along the way where it's kind of a very odd, very different world for people who read comic books now, because things are some of the characters that we see and some of the situations that happen, they're just so alien to our modern interpretation of these characters. But I think it's just worth mentioning how big a thing Daredevil appearing in a 2-issue run of Spider-Man would have been at the time. I imagine kids would have been flocking to the newsstands to see their 2 favourite characters, or their favourite character and another character being in a comic book together.
Yeah, because what, Daredevil's 150 issues in at that point?
Yeah, yeah.
But I would imagine he's probably not anywhere near what he will become. And even now, other than obviously to the people that watch the TV show, I don't think even now Daredevil is...
He's not in like the public conscience, is he? Yeah.
Top tier sort of ones that people know of.
But do you know, sadly enough, I think a lot of people probably go, is that that Ben Affleck movie?
Yeah.
You know, I think that would be a lot of people's interpretation of it. For context, when you sort of say, like, how big was he? I mean, the Daredevil series around this time was being produced bi-monthly, and the sales were bad. They were really bad. In fact, if anything, and well, I'll touch on this a little bit more when we get into actual Daredevil stuff, is it probably realistically wasn't far away from being cancelled. So it wasn't one of your big Marvel characters either at the time. And I think probably why they shimmed him into a Spider-Man story, because I think, you know, that was one of your publishing tricks, wasn't it? If your issues are struggling to get off the shelves, then stick him into a Spider-Man comic to highlight him, and then maybe you'll sell a few more issues.
Yeah, because obviously Kingpin, who turns up later and other things later on, and I think Bullseye as well, had both been Spider-Man villains originally.
Kingpin was Spider-Man. I think Bullseye was predominantly still around Daredevil, but yeah, Kingpin was 100% Spider-Man, and probably hadn't really made many appearances in any other comic books around at this point, which is really interesting when we get to that point. So I don't want to kind of kill it too much, but because obviously now, other than if you've only watched the Hawkeye series, where you think he's some guy in a bad outfit, you know, he is synonymous now with Daredevil rather than Spidey.
But yeah, so it is one of those of, I think it was very clever to have him in on this to start with, but it didn't make me want to go and read the rest of the Spider-Man run. It didn't sort of make me go, oh, I should carry on with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But it did get me in the mood for Daredevil.
Yeah. And again, probably without having read it, probably I imagine nefariously the focus was to get people to pick up Daredevil rather than necessarily next Spidey, so they probably knew they would have decent sales on Spidey.
So we will go into the main body of the work, the Daredevil run. I can't remember which number it starts at. Is it
158? Is the first one in this trade, and it's the first one where Mille comes on as the penciler. I don't know whether it's the first one with Klaus Janson inking. I didn't actually look, because they're often interlinked anyway throughout their career, and certainly for this run. But yeah, this is Mille's introduction, and I think, you know, when I told you I've read this before. And do you know what I forgot? I forgot how many issues Mille doesn't write at the beginning. And this was I don't say a surprise. I knew he didn't initially start as the writer, but yeah, like I think it was a hard transition, should I say, of going, you're picking this up, and it's Roger McKenzie is the writer for predominantly the first, I think, 6 or 7 of these issues. But yes, I remember more Mille drawing and writing. So yeah, we are not in a Mille writing stage at this point. We're in a Mille drawing, and as you say, some of his earliest work for Marvel. So a learning Mille stage, I would say.
Yeah. With these early ones, a lot of them was surprising to see having like Black Widow there.
Yeah.
Because when I think Daredevil, I don't think
and
Natasha.
I did wonder, because do you know what? When I think it's hard, because when I think Daredevil now, I think of Elektra, Kingpin, Bullseye. However, for a lot of the time I read, it was Natasha. Because later runs between then and between Mille and now, she has been brought back quite a few times. So yeah, she is very interlinked for me. But I did wonder how that would scan for you. And of course, this is Black Widow of this time with so very buffy hair is what I wrote down here. She is I mean, what we're talking about, late 70s, early 80s, and she is drawn in such a way as a character of the 70s or 80s. And you can argue about the implausibility of a lot of stuff that happens in comic books. I think the implausibility of how she manages to fight, but not let that hairdo get messed up, is one of the modern day mysteries that still needs solving.
With that, also, like, she's not as badass as you expect her to be.
I think the certainly the kind of the Russian assassin, super spy, secret agent, and hanging out with the heroes is played down a lot here, isn't it? She's more portrayed as, let's say, a street level hero, so akin to a Daredevil, I guess, but possibly even portrayed as a little bit of a less skilled person than Daredevil around here. And as we said about like the jump forward now, I think if you put a picture of Black Widow and Daredevil next to someone and said who would win in a fight, most people would say, well, Black Widow, obviously, because she's rock hard, isn't she? She's an Avenger. Whereas that's not so much the way the story is crafted here.
Yeah. The early ones are very much street level. Mob boss wants to take out Daredevil because Daredevil keeps, corrupting and damaging their small level crimes.
Yeah,
that are going on.
Yeah, he's dealing with a lot of goons, isn't he? A word I know you and I love, but like, yes, it is goons of mob bosses to a lot, and like mob bosses with not necessarily even particularly lofty goals, is it? They're doing what mob bosses do. They're running drugs, or they're robbing, or they're extorting, and Daredevil is a consistent nuisance for them, I guess, how I'd describe it. So, like a lot of this is their machinations of either Daredevil finding out what they're doing and trying to break it up, or them trying to find some way to kill Daredevil, to take him out of the picture so that he can't do these things to him anymore.
Yeah. The one thing I noticed in this first few issues is they are a little bit heavy-handed with keep reminding us how Daredevil lost his sight, the powers that he has, and his cane. And it's something that seems to carry on a lot through the whole of this first trade.
It's very much the
something of the time. Because this thing, is it
Marvel style? I mean, there's. I think it was Stan Lee. I'm pretty sure it was Stan Lee, but it's one of the quotes, and one of the things that's considered the Marvel style is that consider that every comic that you release is someone's first issue. So there are certain key beats that you want to hit, and that would generally be who is this character, what impacts them, and things like that. And obviously in this, it's the he is a lawyer, he is a superhero, he is blind. And I think, yes, they kind of hammer you over the head with it quite a lot, don't they?
But the thing is, the stuff of this era always has the blurb at the top saying "Man without fear" and things like that.
Yeah.
Which they do that in every issue, which is fine. But it's during the actual telling of the actual issue, they re-hammer it in pretty much every issue. And I'm like,
it was quite, as I say,
it was this at the beginning.
It was quite often the consideration point is that you dedicate at least a page to getting people up to speed with who it is, where they are, and what they're doing as a character. Did I love it? No, but I think probably in my growing up years, my formative years of comic books, I just got used to it. I mean, I remember at some point, and I think it was in the 90s, where Marvel kind of moved to a new initiative where they still wanted to do that thing, wanted to make sure that a new reader could catch up. But I think they got to the point where they went, well, we don't really want to keep dedicating like 1 or 2 pages of the story to it. So on the inside cover, they took away one of the adverts, and you'd have a bit of blurb about them. Like, you know, if it's a team, you'd have a picture of them and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, it's a story trope of the time, and I think it was something that Marvel editorial probably was a mandate more than anything else. I don't think there was many people that would have got away with not doing that.
Yeah, it's just one of those. It just seemed heavy hitting, but as I say, it's something I've not really read a great deal of late 70s, early 80s stuff.
Yeah.
So, especially Marvel of that time. So, as I said, it may just be that's what they did.
Yeah, you'll feel it. Some are worse than others, though. I'll be honest, Chris. Like some are really clunky with it. I mean, like some of the Claremont X-Men stuff, I thought he was actually quite good. He'd tend to do it in like a 1-panel dialogue box, and don't get me wrong, he'd cram 8,000 words into that dialogue box. But yeah, it is of its time, unfortunately. And I think that, as I say, there isn't going to be many Marvel books you read from around there where you're not getting this almost hammer you over the head of going, this is what's going on.
Yeah,
because they wanted to capture an audience if that was a new reader.
See, the one bit that they do a lot of, which I do like though, is the other way around, is when they then put what issue they're referring to.
Oh god damn, I missed that, and I love that.
See, I like that. That makes sense. That I think's fine. But yeah, it's just that hammering home of, oh, this is how he got his thing. I'm like, but I've read this already in just every issue so far.
When I say, God damn, I missed that and I love that. I missed that and I love that and I missed that for quite a few years. But I did notice recently, again, doing the Marvel Unlimited thing, where I read the Donny Cates Doctor Strange run. That's back. They're doing it again. And I really liked it. And again, especially having Marvel Unlimited, because I had a little notepad next to me and I was going, okay, like I'm interested in this part of the story. I will note down that issue and I will hopefully, fingers crossed, find it on Marvel Unlimited at some point.
Yeah. So yeah, I do like that. The other thing I will say is with the art on this, compared to obviously the 60s stuff that when we did our way back on Marvel.
Yeah.
The difference another 20 years makes with backgrounds now being in the panels and there being more colours and more things going on in the images. Clearly it was a printing limitation.
Yeah,
it's probably why we got as little as we did in some of those earlier ones. But yeah, it is.
Although having said that, I mean, strange enough, I wrote down as one of my notes is that it comparatively, as much as you said there, like it's come on a long way. But I think one of the things that is quite clear when I'm going through this is sometimes Mille and Jansen just decide to have nothing. But it feels like a decision rather than a necessity. And I think that was really good. You know, you go for a panel where, you know, you would have the buildings behind so you could see like where he was in Hell's Kitchen. But then if the next 4 panels were part of a fight, they didn't feel the need to recreate that building because you've bloody seen it. They know, and then it just focuses you into the people or the action that is happening.
What's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. This first few, I enjoyed them. Was I blown away? No.
There's a lot of, I mean, for me, and I imagine for you, and when I say about for me, as much as I've read this before, I've never gone back before this. So Mille is where I start. I don't have any sort of built up reading of anything from 1 to 157. So a lot of what I'm learning here, and in those first, I'd say probably 5 issues. There's a lot of characters that I do know, so like Foggy's in it, but there are a lot I don't. In particular, Heather, his girlfriend, as we get introduced to this story, and there seems to have been some degree of shenanigans and peril, which we do find a little bit more about later. But their kind of relationship somewhat being on the outs, and almost it felt like early doors that Matt was trying to distance himself from pretty much everyone apart from Foggy and from Natasha. Now,
I genuinely thought early on that he was banging Natasha.
Well, now you say that because I think he is. Now, when I say I think he is, I think he is. I think, and they've had a relationship. I think before this, as I say, I've not read it, but I think that's how and why she's in there. And there's certainly parts in this story where he has split up with Heather, where I think the intimation is that yes, they're hanging out together, they're superheroing together, they're somewhat living together, but also, they're just having sex. They're probably not in a relationship, but they are probably, they've rekindled something in there in Matt's off time from Heather.
But yeah,
and I didn't find them particularly appealing either, I'll be honest. I think the surrounding cast. So this is again Roger Mackenzie. It's the only thing I've ever read of him. I think it might be the only thing he did of any note. I will say that I found a lot of the characters seemed very unlikable in his hands. The Daredevil supporting cast were not endearing themselves to me, but I didn't feel like that was a writing choice. I felt that was that maybe the skill set wasn't there to make these characters compelling, because I've seen them be compelling in so many other people's hands. And I think that's where my kind of harsh judgment comes down on Mackenzie's writing for this. And I think he was very focused on Matt, who's the main character. So you would be, I guess. But
as I said, obviously we get callbacks to a lot of the low level grunts, like what's his fucking name? Turk and Slaughter.
Oh yeah. So I mean, like, I guess they probably were the sort of names that gang members probably were using in the 70s, but they felt quite comical at this point. And we'll pick up on this again later. Turk is going to get mentioned later, but I will say of all the characters in this trade, it goes from like Daredevil 158 to Daredevil 172. Turk gets a rough old time. Now, I'm not saying he shouldn't, because he's a scumbag and a villain, but my God, Turk gets a rough old time throughout this story.
Yeah, he is the goon that gets the beating the most.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think I'd have just given up goonery if I was him, because it really isn't working out for him. And like, he seems to be not only Daredevil's go-to of going, if I need to beat someone up for a bit of information, there's old Turk. But he seems to be the thing that, like, most of the gangs go, if someone's likely to give him some information, needs a bit of a kick, it's probably Turk.
I did like Bullseye in this and how they bring him in.
Yeah.
Again, don't know how much he'd been about beforehand.
Not a lot, I don't think, Chris. I think like he had a handful of stories. I don't think he was kind of prominent. So I think this really was. And it's Mackenzie who gets kind of first run at him, isn't he? He does, and I think that's a really good story with him, as much as I criticised his writing earlier. But I think this is Bullseye's almost coming out party. I think this is where Bullseye probably goes from what could have been a throwaway villain and not used ever again to really fleshing him out into the sort of things that we expect from villains that we read now, probably more than you were expecting back then.
Yeah. The one thing I will say, I do love at the beginning of this run that the first Daredevil that we see is 35%. By the end of the book, the covers, they've gone up to 50. Inflation in front of our eyes.
Well, I'll actually pick up on that. When we get to Mille writing, I'll pick up a little bit on inflation in front of your eyes. There might be other reasons for that, but we'll get back to that. I think it was like 159, which was probably where they go into big with Bullseye. As you said, up until then, there's a bit of goonery. There's a plot line about them pretty much just hiring anyone they can get their goddamn hands on to kill Daredevil. But when Bullseye comes in, and one of the things that I wanted to really focus on, which I thought was such a great touch, and probably, as I say, something that you probably wouldn't see back then, is you actually have Bullseye studying Daredevil. You know, they actually take a page to kind of show him like studying his moves to prepare for the next fight with him, you know, like and again, the early touches are, I think, what becomes the obsession that Bullseye has with him. But he sees Daredevil as this foe that he really needs to conquer. And I don't know, I don't get me wrong, I like the more action side of comic books and the action side of superheroing, but I do like it when they show that little bit more thought. And as I say, I think this was a real nice little nugget early doors to go, yeah, these dudes don't just rock up and be brilliant fighters. Even if they're brilliant fighters, you know, some of them have to do a bit of homework every now and again.
Yeah. The other thing I did notice in the first few, other than Bullseye and Slaughter, there were a few random villain of the weeks that just there and then disappear. So in the first one, there's the really cool looking guy in the cape with the death hands.
Yes.
Touch you will die. There's another one where later on in the run with the disgruntled pension worker that didn't get his pension, who's got the flame suit. So even then, there are obviously a few people that kick about, and we see a lot even in this limited run. We do get a few throwaway villain of the weeks that are just there to make up the numbers.
But even in those issues, we still get our suitable level of goonery in the background, don't we? Kind of the mob bossy goonie stories carry on. But yes, there are some more traditional superhero villains, should I say, rather than superhero fare. And around this point with the Bullseye kind of introduction as well, we start to get the nuggets of the and I've never been sure how to pronounce this, so apologies to the fictional character when I butcher this, but the Ben Urich reporter looking into the origins of Daredevil. And again, nice, you know, like probably because of stuff I know to come, but also stuff I know of like Mille's works, is that he'll quite often use journalism in his story to kind of move things forward. But yeah, I really like that. I really like the idea of a reporter being curious. And then, of course, you know, it frames it very much in the same universe as Spider-Man, because he's working there, and in the background you've got J. Jonah Jameson going, I told everyone Spider-Man was a menace, you know, that sort of thing, just to remind us all that he's part of a wider universe. Art-wise, in this sort of first 4 or 5, it's strange. I know we said it earlier, but there are some panels where I can see it, where I just go, this is Mille, and my God, he draws a fantastic Daredevil. There are also lots of panels where I think they are too bitty and scrappy, and probably, you know, as I say, it's someone learning his craft. But in particular, I found some of the stuff that shone out for me more than anything else was when he was drawing Matt Murdock in his day life as a lawyer. I think he draws, and maybe I'm coloured by my experiences afterwards, but I think he draws Matt Murdock. The Matt Murdock I see, if someone says Daredevil, is Frank Miller's Matt Murdock, and I can really kind of see it in a lot of the panels, even in these early ones.
Yeah, and I'd also say his Bullseye. He draws Bullseye really well. And them two scrapping, he does that so well. That's the one thing that, obviously, I know we've said about it when we mentioned about his Batman run when we were doing Where to Start with Batman.
Yeah.
That he does fighting fucking well.
Yep. He knows how to make it very cinematic, but in the days before I think people ever considered a comic book page as potentially being cinematic.
Yeah, you can see where it started with his Bullseye and Daredevil fights.
And I think nicely, even throughout, let's say, these early ones before he takes over as writer, either he is pushing or Mackenzie is smart enough to have some of the fights where you can really lean into that, you know, like you'll get the lights go out, so he can tell it in a different way, or you just kind of see it in his radar vision, so it gets you a lovely kind of different visual. You said earlier about Samurai for Darth Vader in Star Wars, but a lot of the way the fight scenes are done in these issues, even in these early days, feels to me like someone who had a love of kung fu movies and the way that some of those fight scenes would have been portrayed in those movies. So I think that's what screams out on the page to me for Mille's art in a lot of the fight scenes.
Yeah, definitely with some of the flying kicks and stuff.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. I can't remember if it was Mille that wrote this one or if it was one of the back end ones of the other guy. The one with Hulk.
It's Mackenzie still, but yeah, I've flagged the Hulk one as well, and particularly for me, I was interested to see what you thought of Hulk at this stage, because I mean, I know that you watched the Hulk TV show, but obviously a lot of your hulkiness, is that even a term? A lot of your latter hulkiness will be informed by what Hulk is now. And I think Hulk is massively different. But this is early 80s Hulk. This is not so much Hulk smash, but Hulk hate Banner.
Yeah.
Hulk is a menace. And I wondered how that come across for you. He's probably used to, as I say, like a lot more nuanced Hulk in modern times.
Yeah, I didn't mind this. I think it's because obviously what I've read before and stuff. I expect Hulk to be bigger. Hulk
yes
doesn't look as much of the fucking monster
you
expect him to be. He looks like Lou Ferrigno.
Well, I was gonna say if like let's say Daredevil's like 6'2", let's say Hulk, the way that he's drawn in this looks maybe like 6'10".
Yeah,
like and don't get me wrong, like 6'10" isn't short, but he isn't the probably 8 foot plus Hulk that we're used to. But of course, I mean, he is portrayed in this artistically as often hunched as well, isn't he? Like, and a lot of the scenes, he's kind of, I'm going to try and do a visual representation here, but it's kind of like that. He's often hunched over and not sort of standing. And he looks stockier, doesn't he? He looks like a kind of stocky monster rather than, let's say, the tall beefcake that we're used to now.
But I liked what they did with this. I liked the turmoil that we got because it reminded me of the TV show.
Yeah.
Because the TV show had that, not to the same extent of Hulk hate Banner, want to kill Banner, but him knowing that he needed the other side of him because there was something wrong. It's that, but just sort of elevated slightly because obviously this is much more hate, want to kill and crush Banner.
I'm with you. It brought back like really fond memories for me, and it did make me curious. One, to kind of read some Hulk of the time, but also, and I don't know what issue Hulk was up to at this point, but it was probably ahead of Daredevil. So let's say it's around issue 170. I did think, shit, like we had 170 issues pretty much of this Hulk. And I wonder what that would feel like reading through that, because again, I'm used to a lot more. I come into reading Hulk about 6-7 years after this, and Hulk transitions a lot over that time. You know, like the writers that tend to pick him up tend to really play into the psychological side of the Hulk being, I want to say like a persona. But what's going on in Banner's mind at the time tends to shape what the Hulk is. So I'm used to seeing lots of different versions of the Hulk, whereas I go, bloody hell, could I have read 180 issues of this Hulk? I don't know. But I'm not saying either that it was 180 issues of this Hulk.
Yeah.
But it just feels like it probably was to the most part. But yeah, I was tempted to pick up some Hulk issues, but I haven't yet.
Dude, what I loved was like when he's Banner trying to be calm and then he was on the subway train and it's like, no, please don't do that. I'm gonna get angry. Stop.
I did have some issues though with that of going, and you know, like this is a simpler time. I think that some of the complexity that we are used to seeing in comics isn't there at this time, and potentially some of it's bought by Frank Miller later on and the sort of stories that he tells. But there is a bit, isn't there, where like Matt calms Hulk down, brings Bruce home, lovely purple pants. Of course he has. But he kind of goes, right, Hulk, you know, you should probably get out of this. Oh, right, Bruce, sorry, you should probably get out of the city. And then packs him off on the subway. And the New York subway of the 70s, which is full of bastard scumbags and villains. It seemed like a poor strategy. He'd have been better off walking rather than getting the subway out of the city.
Yes. Again, I really should have probably noted down which one Miller starts with.
It's 168.
But this next one was the one where you get.
Before we move on from the Hulk one of the things I really liked about it as well is, and don't get me wrong, again with the light of what we know in later years, like Daredevil fights Hulk, doesn't he? Hulk's up again, and there is a fight, and Daredevil takes one hell of a beating. Now, contextually, I think if you put Daredevil in a fight with Hulk now, he takes more of a hell of a beating. Like it would be a one punch and done, and it was a lot more competitive than I think it probably would be portrayed now. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting to kind of. It felt to me like I was starting to see the birth of the Daredevil that I know, in that, like, you know, he's got a lot of heart and will always go into the fight, but and put himself in danger and potentially face the comeuppance of that danger, which was a fucking kicking by the Hulk.
Yeah. But the one after that is the one that surprised me a lot. Is the one where you get the whole backstory about his dad and him with the reporter that, because it played in for a few bits here and there, that he gets little ideas of, is that Matt?
Yeah.
Do I know who? And, you know, he even tells him in the hospital bed that he is, but he sort of then tells him his story.
Well, funnily enough, this is, you know, when you said you couldn't remember which one Miller started writing, if you'd have asked me before I went back and read this, who wrote this issue, I'd have said Miller, because I thought this was, and you know, obviously Miller's on penciling at this point, but this is before he does any writing. But I'd have said this is a Miller written issue, and I'm actually quite pleased to have gone back and found out that I was wrong all these years, and this one wasn't written by Miller. And yeah, you know, it's a creative, sort of smart retelling of a telling of the origin, and it leans very heavily into it. And as I say, this is why I think I always thought it was written by Miller, of so many of the story beats and so many of the things that I know get lent on very heavily as the Miller story goes on. And a lovely little bit at the beginning, I didn't want to go unnoticed, is that Matt's in hospital after the Hulk beating. And again, you don't see that much, do you? You don't see that fallibility in the heroes much. But also, you know, lovely scenes in the first few pages where heroes abound, like the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, etc., come to visit him. And I just thought it was really a really nice touch. But I really liked this issue. Of the Mackenzie written ones, this was my favourite by far.
And I think, if I remember, I think this is the one that came out around Christmas that year.
I think so, yeah.
So it's like one of those of, you know, here's a retelling of the story. Obviously, as both of us haven't, you know, ventured way back to the beginning, that, you know, they may have told this all before, or this may be the first time that you get all of the details. Especially about his dad and the.
I think there were added
the fights.
There were added details, and I will say, and we'll probably even cover this in the next couple of minutes. But I will say, get ready, because that origin will be seen a few times in the next few years. Because as I say, it does become a bit of an integral part of it, and quite often it. On playback, it slightly changes depending on where they want the storyline to go.
Yeah, we've seen that many a times on many different things.
I mean, this one, like, at least felt like it was kind of done with some degree of purpose. But yeah, you know, a really decent issue for me. And also, you know, like we said earlier about the trope at the time was every issue is a reader's first issue, let's say. Well, this is something where you go, okay, you know, we've told the origin again. So if this was someone's first issue, then they're going to have a really good handle on who Daredevil is for what's to come.
Yeah. And yeah, I really like this one. This one was a very clever way of doing it because it tied into what had come before with the reporter and his little nuggets of stuff.
Yeah.
For it to be done in a way of Matt to not give out his secret identity, tell everything about his secret identity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that one.
This was the last one before Mille, and when I say Mille takes over the writing in 168, but for the next three, which is the Doc Ock story, I want to say the Gladiator story.
Gladiator's after Doc Ock.
He comes on and co-writes these two issues. So he's partially on writing duty. I mean, going into like 165, which is him sort of coming on. I did find the villain dialogue for Doc Ock really clunky. I think the look of him great, but I found this an awkwardly clunky issue, and I did wonder whether this was dueling egos fighting out on who should be writing what here.
Yeah, I really did not like this one. This was the first one that I was like, oh, this is gash. Yeah, and so I took I didn't take any notes about it because it was a nothing issue to me. It genuinely was not.
I mean, the only things I think it did outside of, as you say, being like kind of quite a clunky, horribly out of time, even at the time issue was you get a bit of kind of the Heather story reintegrating itself back in with Matt, and you know, ultimately kind of rescues her. And you know, we said earlier about how was he banging Black Widow. This felt really callous because he just kind of gets back with her. So it mentions in passing to Black Widow, I probably am in love with her. Gets back with her, and you kind of get Black Widow see that and kind of go, okay, I get it now. I'm off. And it almost felt like a really offhand way of going, yeah, we don't really want to use her for the next bit of the story, so get her out and get the other lass in. It didn't show Matt in the best of lights, I didn't think. It made him seem like quite a unfeeling bastard, I thought. Yeah. But you say gash. For me, the next issue was the gash one for me. This was Foggy's wedding. And despite it having some ridiculous attire by Foggy and his college mate, who I've chosen to forget, that just even in bad memory, I chose to forget his name, so I hope to never see him in a bad suit again. But yeah, this felt again for me like dueling creators, and one of them kind of going, look, you bastard, you've probably oiked me off of this title, so I'm going to get the last bits of story out. But yeah, very clunky dialogue, and a really kind of nothing issue. I felt like I felt like this was, if Mille wasn't on here, and if I didn't know the bit that I'll cover in a minute, this felt like a series that was about to get cancelled, and they were phoning it in for me.
Yeah, again, another shit villain of the week.
Yeah,
and really, it's just dull. That was the thing with this one. It was dull, and like the villainness of I am a gladiator and Bring me a jackal. I must fight. Bring me the jackal. I need your champion, the jackal.
And
They're all
that woman
jackals.
there, I love you. And if you say anything that I disagree with, it means you do not love me, and I will possibly kill you.
And the children.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it was really, really, really bad.
Bad, yeah.
And
yeah.
all for the end bit of Foggy losing the wedding ring to only have it on his pinky
On his
finger.
finger, yeah.
Yeah, no.
We have one more issue before we get to Miller writing. If we want to whip through this, but before we get on to Miller writing, there's a couple of things that I want to kind of clarify, and there's, I think, a couple of questions I want to ask you, again, someone who's experienced this for the first time. But this next issue is written by David Michelinie, and he's someone who I've read some of his Spider-Man stuff afterwards, and he's a writer I quite like. I don't think this is necessarily his best work, but it is the issue, as you said, with the pensioner, the pensioner's kind of the pensioner's wrath, as I kind of thought of it. But this felt okay to me. Again, I mean, I think if I'd read this cold, I don't think I'd have been coming back for the next issue, but it felt fine. I had, one of the questions I had about this issue, though, did Daredevil kill him? And when I say that, like, obviously not directly, but I just wasn't sure when I was looking at the panels, but he threw his billy club, which triggered the weapon, which fired into that guy, which caused him to have a heart attack and die. And I kind of went, okay, you probably didn't know that this weapon would cause him to have a heart attack and die, but it did kind of almost out the blue go. I mean, we'd seen him doing a lot of beating up thugs and street level stuff, but he seemed quite cash about the fact that it was almost like, well, yeah, he's dead, isn't he? And it seemed out of character for what I'd experienced at Daredevil in the issues leading up to this.
Yeah, it very much was. The old man's dead.
Yeah,
you should pay your people properly.
Yeah, but I feel like it was a bad way to prove that point, wasn't it?
Yeah, again, this for me is where these 3 issues, I was like, if this is what everyone's going on about as some sort of, great moment in comic book history, what the fuck are they drinking? Because I ain't in on this.
That was going to be one of my questions to you, and is, if you stopped here, would you read on? Like, would you if the trade stopped here? Would you, even though people say it's brilliant, would you come back for a second trade?
No,
because
nothing in this so far was enough for me to go, fuck me, I have to read more of this.
So
it was all very much, those first few was like, yeah, it's pretty, it looks like Frank Mille, it's early work. The character stuff is fine. I said I liked the
Bullseye was a particular highlight for me in that early part of the run.
Yeah, Bullseye was cool. You had the cool retelling or telling, depending on where, as I said, knowing what's going on, of the background story bit and his dad and all of that. And I was like, that's cool. The Bullseye stuff's cool. The rest of it, not really anything there to write home about. A lot, the villain of the week lot that we've had, other than the guy from the first one, with his hands of death, because he looked fucking cool. The rest of them were really generic shit villain of the weeks.
I mean, as a trade, you can see why they did it, because they're saying this is Daredevil's. This is Frank Miller and Janssen's Daredevil, and they are involved with all of these issues, aren't they?
Yeah.
But I will say, and again, like historically, and I wonder whether when I read it, maybe I probably read Miller writing and onwards, and as I say, probably then went back to some of these older ones, and then maybe that's why I got confused about where the hospital bed story was and stuff like that. But but it's a rough design for the trade, isn't it? Because you're told this is a masterpiece, and I'm with you. You ain't seeing it in the early stages of this, are you? You are going. There's some nice art. There's a couple of decent stuff, and again, I think there's. Bearing in mind, if you're coming to this cold, you don't necessarily know where the storyline goes. Although you might have picked up snippets from as a Daredevil movie, the TV show.
Yeah.
But I can, even in some of these issues, I can see the DNA of what's to come. But there ain't enough DNA of what's to come in there to get me to come back for more, unless I knew what was to come. So, for historical context, at this point, Daredevil, as I said, it was running bi-monthly. Sales were in the toilet, and it was considered for cancellation quite a few times. Pre-Mackenzie, and then also pre-Mille and Jansen coming on with Mackenzie as a writer. Mille has been quoted as he almost walked out on it a few times because he wasn't getting on with Mackenzie, the writer. Really wasn't happy with it. And I said about like when they start to co-write, but looking back at the clunkiness of some of it beforehand. So some of the stuff that we later see as what's going to play a big part in Mille's run, Bullseye, Ben Urich, things like that. I can't help, but I am looking at this with a historical perspective and rose-tinted glasses, that this was probably, as a group of creators, probably Mille and Jansen going, I'd like to do a story about how about we do this, how about we do that? And all the bad stuff is Mackenzie. And that's probably unfair because that probably isn't exactly how it is, but that's how it felt. And when Mille and Jansen come on, the sales tweaked a little bit, but it was when he starts to get onto writing, and we'll get there in a minute, that the sales go through the roof. You know what you said about it going up to 50 cents?
Yeah.
I think partially that was for them to try and make their money back because it was losing the money on the printing. So that's probably why you saw the hike rather than inflation. But when Mille comes on, this gets a groundswell of support really quickly, and also so much so that they move into monthly. So there is a huge transition, I guess, not only in the creative lead with Mille taking over the writing, but around 168, this is the reinvigoration of Daredevil. So I think all of those things you were feeling about it were probably how the comic book audience was feeling about it at the time. And that's on top of whatever they were doing before we start picking up this story. So I don't think you're too out of place. But as I say, I mean, if I'm bearing in mind, I said to you, you should really read this run, you'll like it. When I was rereading through it again with the issues that you were collected, I must admit, I was like, oh, he's not going to like this because this is not showing it in its best light. And I'm so glad they put 168 to 172 in there, because I think if they hadn't, I would actually accept you getting on a train right now, coming down here and giving me a smack in the chops for making you read this.
And paying 25 quid for it.
Oh, no, that's fine. Money's no object. We burn money, Chris. You know this.
But yeah, no, it's said this sort of run up to the wedding and the one after it, and I was like, I'm not getting this.
No.
And this was the point when, because I'd read up to this part when I had Will, when I was in the pub having a beer and reading.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm
Did you at any point think someone had spiked your beer?
No, I was hoping that someone might have done, and it might have made it better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was actually sat there going, this is meant to be like grail level.
Yeah.
Mega. I'm not feeling it. I'm not getting it.
Well, and as we know, I mean, like, for when you revisit something, I mean, we did it in the time machine, the time capsules going back to first appearances of people. Yeah, you understand it's a different time and things like this, but yes, the issues leading up to this isn't even, my God, this is clunky, but I can forgive some of its clunkiness because of the time. It's just, to the most part, below average. Yeah. And I think bless Marvel for having, and I think they obviously must have seen something in either Mille's art, which I do think is good, patchy it up to points till we get to 168, but I do think it's good. But probably in the conversations they were having with him, I think they obviously saw something in that and almost went, okay, we'll get rid of this guy, have a crack, maybe even said you've got 4 or 5 issues, see what you can do, and I think that's where it becomes great. But of course, in another universe, he doesn't, and they just cancel it, and we don't get this story, and maybe we don't get Frank Mille, and we don't get Frank Miller's like work on this, his work on Batman and in Sin City. But God, I'm glad I don't live in that universe. I'm glad this was given a chance. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of, before we get into 168 and beyond, give you kind of a bit of context of going, things were pretty grim. So if you weren't enjoying it, then you weren't alone. You and many other people in the late 70s, early 80s were also not enjoying this series.
Yeah, as I said, obviously when we briefly spoke on it, I was like, I don't think you're going to like what I say on it. Because at that point, that was all I'd read. I'd read up to that part, and I was just like...
Well, in truth, that really worried me because I hadn't started my reread of it. And again, in my head, I thought we were getting 2 issues of kind of non-Frank Miller written, and then we'd be bang right into the Frank Miller story. So I was thinking, oh my God, he's not vibing with it. But yeah, instead what we got is 10, 11 issues of the stuff we got, and then we get some Frank Miller written stuff. And oh my God, as I say, like, I don't think this is a great way to put together a trade, although I understand, because if you're saying this is the complete works of Frank Miller and Janssen, then you have to include this stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't have, or I'd have put like a whole lot. I'd have put a disclaimer at the front to say maybe skip ahead 200 pages, read that bit first, then come back and read this afterwards.
So was the first one
Elektra?
The Elektra one, yeah.
And you know, like again, a character that I know well now, and I knew well before I got to read the Frank Miller stuff, because I'd read some later Elektra stuff before I kind of got to this. But what a way to start your first issue of being the writer, is introduce a whole new character. This is her first appearance in the Marvel universe, and she, I think, makes it quite a big bang with the first appearance.
Yeah, the Elektra one, I should have. I did notice that the writing style had changed and the storytelling had changed, and it was like, where's this been for everything else that I've read so far?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this. This did pick up.
Yeah. You know, I think you know, I said earlier about DNA. I think some of those stories in the Mackenzie run, like the Bullseye stuff and the more street level stuff, I think you see the DNA of this storytelling technique, and I think, and I hate to say this because this sounds particularly mean, but I think the art is even better in this. Now, bearing in mind he's having to write it as well, but I feel like he kind of went, well, I've got a chance to write this, I'm bringing my art A game to this issue as well.
Yeah, Elektra is drawn wonderfully. Looks so cool.
You can see why it's an iconic look and an iconic character. Like, even before they do any of the backstory or anything that is to come with Elektra, I think as a visual, you go, yep, this is one he had in his locker for a long time, and he got it out first opportunity he had to show the big guns.
Yeah, and also, I think it's the first. Well, it's definitely the first one in this round. I don't know whether sort of back in the early days, but you get him putting a scarf around his face when he's young Daredevil, when he's still a kid in college.
Yeah,
which obviously, going to the TV first season of the TV show, that's the look that Matt has for that early season. Is just the bandana over his face, you know.
Well, and for the mythos side of it, as you say, I think, you know, there's stuff in that is being used to this day in TV adaptations, but also with this, you know, like you find, I mean, you find out, well, you meet Elektra in a fight, but he kind of goes, Elektra. And I mean, again, like I hadn't read the 150 odd issues before this, but I imagine all the rest who had read the 150 are kind of going, well, who's Elektra? And you get it in this, don't you? College Sweetheart is the truth. And you know, he makes a massive impact to the Daredevil mythos right here. He adds in not only a cool character, but adds in a whole story that has never been done before about Matt's early life.
Yeah, and you know, for a shame, we don't see her back for the rest of this trade. But this was the first one. I was like, yeah, I want more of this. I want more of Elektra.
And I think it's that intrigue that wasn't there other than the Bullseye storyline for any other part for what we read for this trade. I think this is the bit where you go, this is not a villain of the week. You've shown that there's some importance here. I want this character, and I want to know more about this character, and I want to see this character come back. You know, I said there was a massive spike in sales. Even post this issue, this is where the spike in sales started to come, and I think that's because at one, it's drawn really well. Yeah. I think it's written well, and again, we are dark in this, aren't we? Like, he'd been street leveling some of the issues we'd seen, and some of them were a bit more colourful. But this is rainy Hell's Kitchen. Pretty much everything happens in the dark. The Daredevil that probably most of us are more familiar with now. This is the birth of that Daredevil.
Yeah.
One thing that's worth mentioning about this, as cool as it is, and as cool as Elektra was, nice to see that the issue started with Turk pretending to be blind and saying, "I'm blind by a pencil," and him getting a little shoe-in from Matt Murdock. So the Turk abuse continues even when Frank Miller's in charge. In fact, I think probably even more so. And the culmination of the story, Elektra has been captured, and there's a gun to Elektra's head by one of the thugs, and Daredevil says, "I'm going to walk away." And he knows, you get the thought balloons, you know, the thought balloons that we love, and he's kind of going, right, I'm going to walk so far, he's going to shoot me, and then he's going to shoot Elektra. So he's well aware of what's going on, but kind of through his thought process, he's like, I don't think I can take him out and like stop him from shooting Elektra if I try and sort of turn around now. So, you know, he does what becomes such a thing for him, and probably had been a thing till this point, but I think Miller leans into this, is the listening for the heartbeat, and he says, oh look, I kind of know his heartbeat will raise when he's going to do this. But part of the trick is he's still concerned about doing it. So he says a phrase that was used earlier to Elektra to get her to take the person out by their legs as he throws the billy club. And during that moment, she realizes it is Matt, and she even says to him, so not only have we got the intrigue of will she come back, what is this story, etc., but we now know that connectivity is back there, and she is aware of who Daredevil is. And again, really smart and intriguing storytelling for me.
Yeah, it very, very good. I'm trying to think which one was next, because there's something else pre the.
So this is it's Bullseye next.
Oh yeah, Bullseye in the brain tumor.
And again, you know, I said about DNA earlier, and my thought that Miller might have had some influence over some of it, or potentially just liked what they were doing with it. When we get to this Bullseye story, and again, knowing what's to come, clearly he has a lot of love for the Bullseye character, and he's laying his stall out. He goes Elektra into Bullseye, and get ready for a lot more of that as we go forward.
Yeah, this one was very, very clever.
Yes.
Because it's the whole, he's got brain cancer, so he sees everyone as Daredevil.
So he
beats them down, and then sees them like as general people that they are.
I reckon he must have loved doing this, like drawing this. I think some of the panels in the first few pages of this are just fantastic, because you at first you get to see them as like a street scene, don't you?
Yeah.
And then you get to see them in his mind, and you know, like they are all in Daredevil costumes, but like an old man with a hat and a fag hanging out of his mouth. He's just an old man in a hat with a fag hanging out of his mouth with a Daredevil costume on a couple of seconds later, and it's, you know, it is cracking to see.
Yeah, this one again, stunning to look at, and an interesting and very different story. You know, no one's that I can think of by that point for stuff that I've read again. Obviously, not reading as much old stuff as some others have. Would have. I don't think you'd get many people doing a medical condition is the reason for what he's doing, and is this going to be how he gets off and doesn't murder people?
And you know, like it opens up that because I mean, he's a murdering bastard, like but by introducing this wrinkle to the story, you're almost going, but is he a murdering bastard because of this?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that murder could or should be justified, but I think it's a little bit more understandable if you're going, well, he's got a brain tumor and that is causing him to murder people. Or is it? And yeah, you know, again, great intrigue that we were not seeing in the stories preceding this. Now, I will say, when they did the Daredevil bit earlier on, I think you started to see this bit of mania, didn't you? When it was in the Mackenzie part of it, like his absolute desire to take down Daredevil, and when he realised he couldn't, you know, like he almost has a breakdown, which, you know, again links into this part of it with the brain tumor. But yeah, clearly a character and a villain that they're very invested in, and that they want to do more with.
Yeah, and yeah, this one again was clever, and dare I say, with the Electra one and this one, and definitely what we get at the end, more grown up.
Yes,
than what we were getting merely months earlier.
There's still some bits in there, I would say, around some of the supporting cast stuff, like Foggy's still shown a couple of times and pretty much shown as an absolute buffoon and things like that. But no, I'm with you. I think this is again, possibly the power of a series that is going to be cancelled. I think, like, let's be honest, Marvel probably took their eye off the ball a bit here and said, look, whatever.
Yeah.
Free reign, do what you want. And yes, I think this is a comic for grown-ups all of a sudden. It transitions into that almost overnight, doesn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, this one, again, my faith was being restored here.
There's even little bits, and sorry, I looked to the side because there was one particular page that I left up here to remind me to mention it. But there's kind of a fight at the cinema, and you know, we sort of said about like the use of the background, and okay, a lot of it is nothing, but they actually focus on a kiss in black and white that's going on the cinema screen, and then that is followed by like Daredevil coming in and just a looming shadow of him over it, and again, just really smart art choices. Like, this is, I don't want to get carried away too much, but as we say, this is night and day, isn't it? For writing and for how they're producing their art, this is a meteoric leap ahead from what we've been seeing up until this point.
Yeah. I can't remember if there's anything else, but then it goes into the Kingpin run.
There's so like I was just going to say as well, like there is a bit where like the fight in the cinema is happening, which I think is really good. But again, from sort of smart art perspective, Daredevil gets sort of taken out or knocked off of it. But rather than it just being a single panel, you see him up and he's falling back. But all the way through it, you've got the light stream from the projector coming in. And as I say, it's just that, for me, it's that difference between someone saying, and of course he's the writer for this, but someone saying, draw a fight, and what a really great artist can do when you say draw a fight. Something that's visually grabbing you all the way through. But but no, we do. I know you said about Elektra. We do see Elektra again towards the tail end of this issue because she goes to see Matt, or she goes to Matt's apartment.
Oh yes,
and Heather is in the house, and Elektra's not too
sneaks out.
Yeah, she's not too happy about, I think, the idea that someone else is with her boy toy, but no, I mean, again, a cracking issue for me, and as you say, I think adds tons to the Bullseye mythos, of which there wasn't really a Bullseye mythos before this, and adding tons to the Daredevil pantheon of stories, and made me want to come back for more. And as I say, I imagine if I bought this on the newsstands at the time, I think I'd have been going, wow, this is different than what I'm used to. And we've said this before. We said it in our comic book origin one, and probably in some of our top 5 stuff, is some of the things that really grab you are when they take some familiar concepts that you're used to and give it just it doesn't have to be even a necessarily the world's most dramatic change, but a bit of a change to make you go, wow, I haven't seen this before.
Yeah.
And yes, sorry, that's I banged on about that Bullseye issue, but yeah, we do transition into Kingpin from here. We get
3 glorious issues.
Oh, and I think the first thing that's worth mentioning, I know we mentioned it earlier, but this is Kingpin and the Daredevil, where, and it's even kind of mentioned later on in this run of him. Kingpin kind of goes, I've kind of heard of this Daredevil guy, because they weren't intrinsically linked at this, and I think anyone who's read, even in the last 20 years, would be shocked to go back and read this and go, what? Like, they got through 170 plus issues of Daredevil without Kingpin being part of his story.
Yeah. So first things first with this one, fuck me, he draws a good Kingpin.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah. You know, again, when we said about what we see when someone says a character, when someone says Kingpin, I see Mille's Kingpin. That is the Kingpin for me.
So this one starts with him battering his hired help in Tokyo, because he's run off to Tokyo because he's been run out of his businesses because he's in love with Vanessa. I don't know if the Vanessa story was anywhere before this, but if this is
Spider-Man.
I was going to say, because if this is Miller's concept, him with Vanessa, yes.
I like, particularly in this fight, though, that everyone he's fighting is in like karate uniforms, and he's in a kind of more of a sumo one, isn't he?
Yeah.
But it made me think of, like, this is when you were in primary school and you had to play shirts and skins football, and you'd be like, don't make me play on the skins side. It's bloody freezing out here. I don't want to get smacked like with a ball rock hard. But no, Kingpin, all about the playing for the skins team.
Lobbing people about for fun.
Yeah, and you know, like again, that I imagine a lot of the audience who's probably reading Daredevil probably did or was reading Spider-Man, but I think very effectively established why he's a threat beyond being an organised crime boss by doing this fight scene. Because yeah, he just takes on loads of them, doesn't he? And he's quite casual about it. In fact, quite critical as to, next time, get me people who are going to give me a harder fight.
Bring me better.
Yeah.
Do better.
Yes. My school report. I'm back to school days. I'm in skins. I've got do better on my school report.
So yeah, he has a file that he's going to give to the US government about all of the minions that have taken over the crime syndicate since he's left. And Vanessa goes off to get an attorney.
And again, he's kind of gone good, hasn't he? I mean, I think that's what they're trying to establish here. Now, I will say, because of him beating the tar out of people, including excessively one of them for mentioning the term Kingpin, you kind of set that dichotomy there, don't you, of going, he's clearly chosen to put behind his life a crime because he loves this woman, but he's still got that in him. You know, like he's not he's not turned to the side of angels for anything, any particular like, self-serving reason, I guess.
He's still a cunt, but he's a cunt with a heart.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, Vanessa goes over to New York, meets with Matt,
and he does say like this is probably a bit foolhardy considering there's lots of gangs in New York who are out to get us. Maybe this isn't the best idea, but she goes.
Yeah. You get the interesting one where they go into the office and they seem that they're about to attack Matt and Foggy. She has to calm down the security. And then obviously she gets kidnapped. Because of course they know that she's there.
Yeah. And you know, like you get a lovely little fight scene with Daredevil. And I think that's something that we said before, I think Mille draws a nice fight, but I think even in these transitional episodes or transitional issues where Daredevil isn't necessarily fighting the big bad, I like the fact that you still get to see him heroing.
Yeah.
Like almost the day job element of heroing still.
Yeah. You
get the release of Bullseye next.
Yeah,
which,
Bullseye comes out of prison.
Which I found really interesting because like at first they kind of say it offhand. It's almost like, oh yeah, and Bullseye's being released today. I'm just like, what the fuck? Like the guy's an absolute kind of psycho killer. But again, it's that different touch. It's that extra bit of effort because it's done for a reason. And he goes into length of describing why, because of the brain tumor, that that getting high-paid lawyers by all of these new goon bosses that want to have him as an assassin, they use it as his defense, don't they? I mean, effectively, they say he was non-compos mentis because of a brain tumor at the time, so he can't be held responsible for what he did.
I do love how they attempt to get Kingpin because they know that he's going to fly back. So he flies in a plane as a decoy.
That plane did not look big enough to hold Kingpin for me. That's the only criticism I'd have. I'd have looked at that plane and said he wouldn't have fit in there in any way, shape, or form. No way did he fly in on this. But yes, you know, it feels it's very gangster movie, isn't it? It's very late 70s gangster movie. A lot of the stuff a lot of the machinations that are going on in and around this, you know, like people sort of turning, double crossing, like they getting the information of where that plane's coming in, and them going, okay, we'll take him out. I love 70s gangster movies, so this is scratching that itch for me as well, and I'm sure that's where a lot of Mille's inspiration come from for big parts of the story.
Yeah, we did forget to mention though who one of the most important people in the whole of Daredevil to tell us where Kingpin was coming in from.
Good old Turkey
is hiding. Turk.
There's a couple of panels in this issue, and it's when Bullseye is released, and you know I said about like inspiration from gangster movies. Well, and having not had the backdrop of what came before this, but this is where I really started to notice in the art a lot of the film noir influences. So all of a sudden they'll be in a room with a blind. So they'll be stood there having a conversation, but you know you'll get the black lines of the shading from it. Again, only 3 issues into Mille writing and drawing this, and this is different gravy. This is for me. This is day and night on quality.
Yeah. From there you get the part where they are about to give Vanessa to Kingpin in exchange for the files. He uses a special sonic audio wave.
That's the only bit where I think it slightly kind of touches on the ridiculousness of sometimes that can come in superhero comics, isn't it? of what an elaborate thing to invent a kind of sonic wave weapon that will only take out the bad guys because they're using, I guess, stuff to protect their ears, the good guys. Which, you know, again, not the worst plan, but it seems a little bit far fetched for the grim and gritty that we're seeing in this.
And you've got the hired help of Kingpin with a mortar.
Yeah.
Just thinks it's a good idea to shoot a mortar into the construction site where they are.
Well, there's it's left a bit more ambiguous, isn't it? Like you just see the mortar and someone lets the mortar off, and I think you are supposed to think that it's one of the Kingpin's enemies. That was almost their plan B of going, well, if we don't get what we want, we're going to kill his wife Vanessa anyway. Which we find out in the not too distant future that wasn't the actual case. But there's a lovely little running gag that starts in this issue, and that's the running gag of Daredevil throwing someone through the window of that bar. And then, like, as the issue goes on, and the next issue, like, it happens a few times, and she's just like, and she doesn't say it because it's still a kids comic book, but it's almost like she's going, for fuck's sake, I've just got that window replaced.
How much these cost?
Well, and the thing is, I know this is sort of jumping ahead to the next issue, but it does lead to a point where it's Turk again, poor old Turk, where he luzzies Turk towards the window, and she's going, like, effectively, for fuck's sake, and he kind of hooks the billy club round and pulls him down before he goes to the window, and again, I just thought lovely little touches like that. Like whether he knew he was going to get a long run at this point, and as I say, I think the sales figures were really turning around at this point anyway, and he was getting a lot of critical acclaim. But I think this is him kind of going, well, this is my story, and I'm going to bloody tell it, and I want this running gag that comes in it. I was really enamoured with that. Bearing in mind kind of how arguably groundbreaking, you could say, like introducing the Kingpin is to the Daredevil universe, introducing like why he comes back. I think it is some of those smaller touches that really are hitting me hard at this point to go, yeah, this is why it's brilliant, because not only does it tell a good story, but it's got so much more flavour to it.
Yeah, there's definitely more fun to this, that it's got those tropes that you see in other Mille stuff that he does with Sin City, which he does with the Batman run that he does.
Yeah,
just little quirky tropes that are very Frank Mille.
Yeah,
you see them starting here, like with the window stuff.
So I'm giggling again just thinking about it. Just it's almost Airplane-esque with its running gag elements.
Yeah. You've got and also a bit where Daredevil goes undercover, incognito as Shades.
Yeah.
How no one noticed it's him because he's wearing exactly the same type of shades that he wears when he's Matt Murdock.
What? It's because he's called Shades. He had a hat on, Chris. Respect the if you wear a hat, you no one will know who you are.
I think the really cool bit is him trying to go into Kingpin's
safe,
just showing how massively strong Kingpin is, as you see Matt struggling to open up this door.
Get a lovely little fight in that safe as well, don't you? And again, it's the, you've got this hugely strong guy against the hyper-trained, very nimble man. But I think to a degree, it feels believable that Daredevil is Hulk, probably a lot more believable than the Hulk. When I'm not saying Kingpin's Hulk level, but I think because of the confined space that it was being done in.
Yeah.
However, Daredevil still takes a shoe in at the end, doesn't he? Like.
Yes. So also the thing with that is, I do love how he goes in with it thinking that he's just a fat ass.
Yeah.
It's just fat. It's fine.
Fatty fats and fat ass is said a lot in this run, and at first I thought this is just a Mackenzie thing, but no. Mille likes to continue the fat insults. He's kind of not shying away from that at all.
Yeah, he very soon notices that he's not fat at all, and it's all
He's actually
fucking
just
muscle.
fucking rock hard. Yeah.
To his error. Not to, spoil a story that's 30 years old, but in the third issue, we get a very interesting twist, and we get the moral dilemma.
Well, there's a few twists I thought in this because and I say twists, I mean maybe these things don't count as twists, but one of the things that I thought was could be considered twisty is just like how easy it was for Bullseye to kind of go, fuck these guys, I'm going to go and work for him. And all it really took was Kingpin going, fuck these guys, come and work for me. And I love that because I think, again, in another era, in another person's hands, these are two bad guys fighting or two bad guys on the other side of it. And at a push, they might team up to take on the hero. But no, ultimately, he just went, I'll pay you better than these guys. Come and join me. And I think, again, it's that layering in the making you realise why Kingpin was the Kingpin. Because he doesn't fuck about. He gets to the core of what the person wants and he delivers on it.
It's very much, I know what you need, I know what you want. Come with me and I'll sort that for you.
Yeah. Makes him light his cigarette, though, in what felt like almost a prison bitch hold my pocket moment.
That is true. I didn't think of that.
Dude, I'm always looking for prison bitch metaphors. Ever since I watched Prison Break and could become obsessed with the idea of if I turn my pocket inside out, will my bitch hold on to it and follow me around? You've got to have goals in life. That's all I'm saying.
Well, as long as you know what you want in life.
Yeah. I mean, it's a simple ask, isn't it? I just need a prison bitch.
But this was very, very clever with the storytelling and especially the ending. Again, I'm not going to spoil it just in case anyone hasn't read it and has been intrigued enough by what we've come over. So I'm going to avoid ending, but I think this 3-story arc was enough to make me see the potential on why this is held where it is.
I mean, I know you're sort of saying the 3, but I think in all honesty, even if you go out the other 2 issues, and if you look at this 5 issue, and my God, first time, I know he co-wrote, but first time writing a solo superhero book, in that first 5 issues, he introduces us to Elektra, a backstory that wasn't previously there, but didn't feel like it had been forced in, fleshed out Daredevil's potential motivations as a villain, but also, as you say, kind of something that could be used to have him repeatedly come out of prison. Like, because that's one of the things we always say about like villainy in the Marvel universe. You go, why are these dudes not doing hard time, and how are they always appearing? But he's got that kind of out, and then bringing the Kingpin squarely into the Daredevil universe, but not only squarely, but bringing him back as the Kingpin. Like, again, not to spoil the twisting, but because of things that happen in this storyline, Kingpin is back in New York going, I run this town. I think this is great. I think it is great because it is the building blocks for what is to come. But I think as a standalone, if the world had ended there, I think you could almost go, damn, I'd have loved to have known what happened next. But as a 5-issue story, as 5 issues of story, I think it's a cut above. And my God, I don't know how he got so good so quickly at doing this. If I was someone coming in cold, and again, bearing in mind, I said to you, I think you should read this. You'll love it. And if I had my time again, I would say start from issue 168. But then, to be honest, in my head, trade started from issue 168. So
Yeah.
it's just unfortunate, I think. And again, I say unfortunate. I mean, you know, they're trying to give you the full works, whereas I think it's a tough slog for large parts of this full works, which is a shame. But yeah, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, as I said, if this trade had have finished pre the
At 167, yeah.
pre the Miller rating on his own, I wouldn't be going back.
As I say, mate, if it had ended then, I'd have said to you, you can give me a smack as hard as you want for free, because yeah, I think yeah, I sold you a bad one if that was the case. Which, but yeah, I'm so glad that these 5 issues were in there, and I'm so glad you liked them, because this is it. You know, this is, if you like these 5 issues, you're going to like Miller's run on Daredevil. If you didn't like these 5 issues, yeah, you really aren't. But I think if you can see the quality and you've got some intrigue in this bit, then my God, I think you'll love what's to come.
Yeah, I have seen that there is a volume 2 of the set that I have, so I may end up getting that, or I might just, you know, at some point when I can sit there with my laptop and not playing Football Manager and do reading on the laptop.
The Devil's work with Football Manager, yeah, I would. I mean, God, like having we've said before, having a lovely collected edition of something is a wonderful thing. So I would kind of always advocate getting that. And, you know, we're both, I think, more of a fan of print. However, yes, all those issues are on Marvel Unlimited, so they are available to you to have a read if it's kind of down on your list. But I would kind of hope that I would hope it's higher on your list to get to after reading those last 5 issues than it probably was a year ago, when maybe it wasn't so much on your radar.
Yeah, it is in the reading list. It will be sort of moved up a few from where it is, or where it was sort of earlier when I started reading volume 1, because it was not even on the continue to read list.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it is one that I will jump back
feels...
in. I think what I might do with it is, instead of getting a collection or sitting there, I might do the occasional issue every so often or something like that with it.
Yeah.
Unlimited. Because yeah, as I said, the initial, with it being the chunk that it's like 13, 14 issues, I think, as the whole book. It was a slog.
Yes.
And I was definitely daredeviled out by the end of it.
Well, you look at like the way that trades kind of work here. You know, people work now. People write for the trades, the 5 to 6 issue story arc, and like again, a man ahead of his time, because you look and you could have this 5 issues as a lovely trade, and then, you know, potentially the next story being another 5 to 6 issues and a chunk like that, and smaller storyline chunks like that may be the way to consume. It's certainly how I consumed it. I didn't have an omnibus at the time, or a big collected issues. I think the reprints I had were sort of 5 or 6 issues at a time. And again, I think for us, you know, like we do this. We love talking about comics, and part of this is a bit of an adventure for me. I got to reread this, and I got to maybe take the rose-tinted glasses off for some of it that I potentially had, which, you know, is good for historical context, because you can kind of go, oh, and I will still say, as far as I'm concerned, this Miller run on Daredevil is a masterpiece. However, for an educational purpose, next time I meet Lacey in another universe, I'll go, yeah, this is a masterpiece. But only read the Bullseye issue before 168, and then go from there.
Yes. So we will be back next week with Star Wars.
Oh yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading it again, mate. I really am. As I say, it's been on my list, and I am really pumped to get back into that Star Wars universe.
So yeah, definitely be volume 1 and volume 2 if I can get it read in time for next week.
Yep.
And you'll have to point me in the direction of one of the Vader ones, and I'll try and get some of the Vader stuff.
Yeah, I'll have a look. I'll have a look post show to
For
see
that.
whether it's on Prime Reading. I think it might be. I think Volume 1 might be.
If not, it'll be on.
Yeah, Marvel Unlimited. Yeah,
It just means I have to do it on the laptop.
Yeah.
So as always, ring the bell, press the like button, hit the subscribe button, do the buttons,
And if you want to play with us more, join us on Facebook. We've got a little Facebook group going, and it's quite nice because you get to interact a little bit closer. And while we do social media, come and follow us on Twitter. As I say, I'm getting my ass into that Twitterverse, and so far, as a comic book fan, I'm bloody loving it. People are more than happy to recommend stuff to you and push you in a direction, and certainly from our regard, we'll do the same. So if there's anything that we've read, I mean, God, I've actually managed to get comic books read of an evening recently. So I spend most of my evening reading an issue and then tweeting about it.
Damn, if only I had that sort of time. So Sed runs the Pop Culture Productions Twitter. I'm in charge of the Sed Lacey comic Twitter, which is why that one's quite quiet, because I've been far too busy.
Well, and also you're less of a gobshite than I am, which is to your testament, I think. Like sometimes less really is more, isn't it?
It is. Things on the channel. Show and Tell with Tunes. Come and get your music reviews on. As of the time of recording this, which there will be more probably by the time you hear this, but at the time of recording, the first live Show and Tell with Tunes has gone up with me and the boy going to Ghost. The idea of the Show and Tell with Tunes relaunch is it is just going to be sort of album reviews, gig reviews, short snippets, probably 10-15 minutes max. So little ones for your evenings, for your weekday evenings, to get them into you.
Appetizers.
Yes. Said by now should have started his comic stash shorts.
I'm thinking, Chris, and I haven't mentioned this. I'm thinking I might call it Pop Culture Reviews or something like that, because then I could touch on comics, TV, movies, all of that jazz, hopefully. But yes, there will be reviews coming to the site in the not too distant future. PS probably already happened by the time this releases.
And TW will be making its return.
I have, and again, depending on where this releases and depending on what's come out, I have spent, when I'm not reading comics and talking about them on Twitter recently, or playing Football Manager, as you say, because that is still an obsession of mine, I have spent a lot of time thinking about what I would book if I was in charge of a wrestling company. Now, whether the product actually follows through on the amount of thought that went into it, but I can assure you I thought about it a lot. It might still be crap, though. But yeah, that's coming soon. So.
And Pops, will they be making a return?
Yeah, we mentioned this. Yeah, probably. I mean, one of the things, and again, like depending where this is on the release schedule, one of the things we did when we moved to this Pop Culture Productions really was, well, initially a home for the Comic Stash, and we quite like doing our Reacts videos, but yeah, really, it was, as I say, it was a hope to kind of build maybe a bit of a community and get some people on, which is stuff that we're working on. But not to play the violin, this stuff sometimes takes some time, and you want it to be right, and you want to kind of get it out in the right way. But there are lots of plans, and generally we're quite good at delivering on our plans. It might be a week or two later than we thought, but yeah, I think there will be a lot more content to come on the channel. Yes. But of course, our prime baby is this, because it's rekindled my love for comic books, and I didn't realize how much I missed it as a hobby until I really started to get back into it. There's I should say, there's nothing quite like. I guess there are lots of things quite like it, but having this as an avenue to find something new that you really love, and in some cases then find out there's 300 more issues of it to consume.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, anyone that wants to come in, have suggestions or ideas of shows that you're going to do,
Yeah.
talk to us.
Yeah.
You know where to find us. We've just told you where to find us.
Yeah.
Come along. Let us know.
We are very open to to doing whatever with whoever, whenever. I've got a feeling I'm leaning into Orange Cassidy's entrance there. Isn't he not from wherever, weighing whatever? But yeah, you know, like we like to talk, so shit, you know, give us more stuff to talk about, give us more people to talk to.
Yes. So until
and read comics. Read comics.
Make sure you read comics.
Yeah.
The boy told you that last week.
He did. He did. He's my new lifestyle guru, so that's why I'm jumping on it.
So you're getting on the manga then?
Yeah. Probably.
So until next time, and when we are in a galaxy far, far away, goodbye.